Hello and welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I'm Matthew Lucas, and we do post every week on a Friday, so hit subscribe and the notification bell if you want to hear of our continuing adventures, Stephen.
What a good idea. And today,
yes,
we're going to talk about an interesting group of plants that seem to slip through the net regularly.
Yes, this is a favourite subclause of yours.
It
plants
is.
that slip through the net.
Yes. Now, people talk about spring flowering plants.
Yep,
lots of them, blossom trees, all that sort of stuff. People also talk about autumn coloured plants, so maples and things that go fabulous colours in the autumn.
Yes.
But how often do people talk about spring foliage plants? So that's the premise for today.
Ta-da! We're going to talk about spring foliage plants.
Yes.
Very interesting, because Stephen's been sending me pictures and they're just incredible.
Yeah, and they are the sort of plant that when I point them out to clients and things, they go, oh my God, I should have that in my garden. But I don't think I rarely, if ever, get anybody who come into the nursery and specifically ask for a plant that has colourful spring foliage. Isn't that interesting?
Well, now you can, because we'll put the list of plants that we cover below. And I guess then, are we beginning at the beginning beneath the spreading elm tree?
We indeed are. This is my rather handsome specimen of Ulmus parvifolia frosty, which is a variegated Chinese elm.
And variegation. We made a video about variegated foliage and we talked about this tree, and I pointed out that I always felt it just looked sick and diseased, and why don't you chop it down?
Yeah, you made disparaging remarks, I have to say, but there you go.
Here we are, it is now spring in Australia and the foliage is completely different.
Yeah, it is. It comes out this amazing buttery lemon colour.
Yeah.
And as the season goes on, the green comes in and the silvery sort of colour sort of ends up just being the teeth round the edge, hence the name Frosty. So it comes out, its highlight period is in fact in the early spring, when the whole tree is this amazing buttery lemon colour. Beautiful thing, and very elegant in form and shape as well. So I think it's a tree well worth looking out for.
It really is, and it does give you quite a bit throughout the year, because it looks interesting, well, subject to opinion, when it's variegated, but in spring it's amazing. And remind me, in the autumn, is it?
It goes back to a yellowy shade before it sheds, so its autumn colour is not as lively but similar in shade to its spring colour. So it goes from lemon through to green with white tips to the leaves, and then goes back to a lemony yellow before it sheds. And
really, and you'll see in the picture, it's like a dome of sort of gold, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like a halo.
It's a wonderful, I mean, even in the winter when it's bare, it has wonderful structure to the tree as well. So I think it's a tree that pays its way in a garden, so I definitely plant it.
So let's talk a little bit about how you'd use these plants, and we might go through each plant as we get to it. But with a tree, for example, if it's, well, this isn't primarily spring foliage, but when we're talking about variegation, you made the point you shouldn't have too much, because it can just look sick and diseased. So you've got to kind of be strategic about where you put it.
Exactly.
Is that the same thought with spring foliage?
Yeah, again, I think, you could go over the top and plant something that has pink spring foliage with something that has yellow spring foliage that has something with orange spring foliage or whatever.
Yeah.
But it could be a bit indigestible. I think it's probably better to use them with a green background or green surround so that they become a feature in their own right. So yes, I think less is more with all of these types of plants. So strategically planted in different spots around your garden where they can stand out and be a beacon at the time of the year when they're looking at their best.
Which is kind of the same principle for autumn foliage and variegated foliage.
Although I have to say in the autumn, I'm inclined to let things slide. I don't care. The more colour, the better.
Right, okay.
Because we're going into winter.
Right.
And so for me, it's the last hurrah. So I would have yellow autumn foliage with red autumn foliage with whatever other colours in autumn I could get, just because it's the end of the season and I want to go out with a bang.
Right, okay. Well, let's go in with a bang. Should we go and look at the next couple of types of plant?
Yes, what a good idea.
Off we go. What do we have here, Stephen?
Well, here we have a selected version of the European Sycamore Acer pseudoplatanus.
Yes.
The sycamore maple. Sycamore in America tends to be used for a different tree, so that's the Liriodendron is often called a sycamore in America.
Is it?
So, this is, believe it or not, Acer pseudoplatanus Prinz Handjery. Prinz Handjery.
That's a long tag.
Yeah, well, he was a Latvian prince. His Christian name was Karl. He died in 1933, and I'm assuming it's the same prince that this plant was named after.
Yeah.
And it's a slow-growing, comparatively small, rather floriferous version of sycamore maple.
I was about to say, the thing that strikes me is these beautiful flowers. I can see then how the seeds form those kind of chandeliers, I suppose, but it's actually really attractive in bloom, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's rather good in bloom, but of course our topic today is about spring foliage specifically. So when this one comes out, and I might add, this one gets muddled up in the trade rather badly, and we'll show you the next one later, but it always gets muddled up with the other one. Prinz Handjery comes out this really strange lemony pinky colour in the spring.
Rose gold, you can see we're dropping the footage in now when the leaves first came out. It's a stunning colour.
And then it goes this very soft, limey, yellowy green, which I find very appealing.
It is.
And then in the autumn it will go shades of yellow again before it sheds. And of course when it gets its winged seeds on it, they can be an ornamental part of the tree as well. So it's quite a slow growing form. Touch wood. I haven't as yet found it to be profligate with seedlings, and that's one of the issues that sycamores sometimes have in areas that they aren't native to. They can become quite weedy. This one hasn't started throwing up any seedlings, so it may be sterile, or it just may be I've been lucky about it. But this plant is probably 3 metres tall, 3.5 metres tall. It's been in the garden here for about 5 or 6 years or more. So a good small tree, I would say, for a suburban sized garden.
And when it's fully grown, what do you think?
4 to 5 metres would probably see it out.
In feet?
In feet, so that's probably 18 to 20 feet tall.
Right.
So, you know, very appropriate for a small garden.
Yeah.
And in fact, slow enough growing that it could even make a really good tub specimen for years. And of course, being a sycamore maple, I mean, they're cold hardy, they're fairly heat tolerant. There's not too many things that can affect them. They don't care whether the soil's alkaline or acid. So they'll grow in most environments, and in some environments rather too well.
Well, yours is beautiful. I actually really like this colour of the foliage too, and I love the flowers.
Yeah.
All right, so what is the next maple then?
All right, well, we're going to have a look at a much more famous variety of the same species.
Okay.
So another plant of Acer pseudoplatanus.
Right.
And this time one called Brilliantissima.
Okay, so we're dropping that footage in now.
Now, Brilliantissima is even slower growing than Prinz Handjery, and its foliage in the spring is really quite a hot pink. It can almost start off almost a dark salmon pink, goes through candy pinks, I suppose you'd call them, then to almost white, and then to green. So by midsummer, Prinz Handjery and Brilliantissima will blend into the garden. They'll sort of disappear a bit because they don't have much visual impact in the summer, and then they'll both colour in the autumn before they shed. So Brilliantissima is generally the one that you'll see around most, but this one sometimes masquerades as such. And in fact, I think for memory, I got this plant originally as Brilliantissimum, and realised fairly early on in the piece that it wasn't colouring the way it should, and so therefore I started doing study, and so I'm fairly confident that I've got the right name for it, even though I can hardly say it.
There you go. Well, it's so beautiful, and it's so interesting to observe, because I come to your garden often, but this is really leaping out at me now as you're walking up the drive.
A spring impact.
There you go. And it's by the side of your drive, so it is in a good sight line to see. But obviously as it gets bigger, you'd see it if it was in a shrubbery and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So it could make a good large shrub / small tree in a shrub border, or as a small specimen tree in a little piece of lawn somewhere.
If you were going to grow these as tub specimens, they'd need to be in full sun though, wouldn't they?
They need to have fairly high light levels, but they don't actually have to be out in full sun. They will cope with semi-shade. The issue we have in Australia, though, they don't really like 45 degrees in a howling northwesterly.
That's 110 Fahrenheit.
Because it will scorch their delicate foliage a little bit. So a little bit of protection from the strong hot winds and probably the real heat of the day in the middle of summer. So that would be the only thing I would say about these. Otherwise, they're, well, almost unkillable.
Oh, don't put that in writing. All right, well, I think we're now going to go and look at a favourite of mine, and yours is not looking so good.
Yes, all right. Confession time. Let's go and have a look.
Stephen, now here's the funny thing. Someone literally posted this on their Instagram stories, a friend of mine, saying, what is this tree? And I was able to tell them because of you. Tell the audience, what is this?
All right. Botanically, this is Tuna Synensis Flamingo.
Not. Oh, I was going to say not like the fish, but it's like tuna flamingo. That's hilarious.
No, it's tuna. T-O-O-N-A. Tuna.
Okay.
Now, it's commonly known as Chinese cedar.
Yes.
The wild form of this doesn't have pink new growth.
You were just telling me this story. Okay, tell the viewers.
All right. Now,
the arc of this. It's incredible.
Well, it is a bit of a story, really.
Yeah.
There's a very slim chance that it might have actually come into Australia as seed with a Chinese gold miner way back.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it was first discovered in Australia commercially back in the 1930s or earlier.
Yeah.
And it was growing in a commercial nursery here in Australia. Somebody from New Zealand imported it into New Zealand. It seems to have disappeared out of cultivation here, and then in New Zealand they called it Flamingo, and then it's been re-imported back into Australia, and from here it's then gone to America and Europe. Now, the wild form of this tree does completely different things. So how this arose and why it is the way it is, I've no idea. The wild version grows as a single trunk tree.
And that is a Chinese native, given
Yes.
it's called Chinese cedar.
Yes.
Right.
This tree has a vertical upright habit.
Yeah.
The wild version makes a round crown tree.
Because the ones I've seen are always very narrow.
Yeah, very narrow. This has a tendency to sucker, which the wild tree doesn't. And this also is sterile because nobody's ever seen it flower. So it never flowers or produces any seed. So flamingo is a really weird tree, I have to say. And it is edible. Go on.
Is it?
Go on. I'm going to have some as well.
That
Vegemite.
No, I hate Vegemite. Don't say that. No. To me, there's a little bit of rocket or some other kind of spicy leafy green. Wow.
Yeah, so it's very edible. Might be something that's acquired taste. It'll look fantastic in a mixed salad, I have to say.
Looks fantastic in a mixed garden too.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the thing. Look at that. Look at the colour.
Yep.
It's that. I mean. Is
Well,
it
it's
hot,
hot
pink?
pink, yeah.
It's hot pink.
Yeah.
And when you see there's a mature one near me, and we've got some footage of others we're going to drop in.
Yeah.
And we'll say why in a minute.
Yes.
Because it's edible. It is so striking at this time of year.
Yeah.
It's literally like
beautiful
flames of hot
I mean,
pink.
it doesn't do anything of particular interest once it's gone through its spring phase.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this hot pink, then it will go almost white, and then it will go green.
Yeah.
Once it gets to the green mode, it sort of just blends in with everything else, other than for its very vertical habit. So its habit can be useful in, say, a narrow bed.
Yeah.
I saw a beautiful one growing against a chimney once, just sort of silhouetted against a chimney.
And the one I saw was in a narrow bed by the side of a building.
Yeah,
So because
and
it's-
driveways are another place,
Yeah.
so
So
you can get verticality without it getting in the road. But having said that, one point of warning, this form does sucker.
So this is the thing, So how do you manage that? Just with a spade once a year?
Yeah, just go in and what I do is I go through and dig out the suckers, pot them in pots and sell them to other suckers.
That's because you're a ruthless capitalist.
Yeah,
Stephen,
exactly.
Right?
So, but yes, you'll have to manage the suckers a wee bit, but that's all.
Yeah, but it's not crazy suckers.
No, it's very manageable.
So, I'm loving the taste of this. Let's let go of yours.
Yeah, boing.
What else likes the taste of this tree, Stephen?
Our local possums love the taste of this tree, and behind us I've got one that this sucker originally came from that is probably about 5 metres tall, and last season the possums found it and they cleaned all the foliage off, and it hasn't broken any new foliage this year. I think the main plant is probably, if not dead, close enough to. So if you're in an area that has Australian possums in quantity, probably I wouldn't try and grow a Tuna Synensis.
They love that umami taste.
They certainly do. I might add, some people will know it, particularly in Australia, under its old genus name. So it was also known as Cedar sinensis. And so if you see that written somewhere, it is the same plant. So don't be confused.
Quick question, how tall is it going to get?
Look, it can get to 6 metres tall probably, but quite vertical, so it doesn't grow terribly wide.
In feet?
Be 20 feet, 25 feet,
Okay.
roundabout in the old measurements.
They're not huge and quite narrow, so perfect for a suburban urban garden.
In fact, some of the footage we've got that you might actually put up is of one growing on the front boundary fence of a suburban garden in Melbourne that I just happened to be driving past, saw the tuna in beautiful spring leaf, parked the car, jumped out, stood on the nature strip and took some images. So there you go. Whoever's tree that is, if you see it on here, you'll know it's your tree.
Now, Nothing you can do with that, just chop it down, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah, and I will leave it for this season just to see whether it reshoots anywhere or not, and if not, then I'll just have to get the chainsaw out and take down the Tuna.
And will you leave this sucker to take its place?
Why not? I mean, in due course.
Not in a bad spot.
Yeah, it's on the edge of a path. It can stay there, and because it's going to be up in the air, but I'll guarantee the possums will find it in due course when it gets strong enough for them to climb to the top of. They'll take all the leaves off it and kill it. So I think long
Evil
term,
things.
probably not a plant for my garden,
There we
unfortunately.
go. But there is another plant that is for your garden we're going to look at now.
Ah, yes, let's go and have a look at the
Okay.
fourth one.
All right.
This is our fourth spring-coloured tree. Now, it doesn't look overly spectacular now because it's starting to turn green.
Yep.
But this tree has to be one of those things that will give serious value in a garden because it's doing something all year round.
And we do have footage of a few weeks ago when it was at its peak, which we'll drop in now.
Yes, so it's a tree called Koelreuteria paniculata
Yep.
coral sun
Yes.
is the cultivar you're looking for.
Yep.
Koelreuteria is commonly known as a golden rain tree. It really does give great value. It's a small spreading shade tree, so
Yep.
again a nice shade tree for a lawn or something in an average garden.
Yeah.
Again, a sort of 5 to 6 metre tree, maybe a little bit bigger with age, but I don't imagine I'll live long enough to get one that big.
Is
And
it slow growing then?
no, it's quite fast. That
Okay.
that one put on probably the best part of a metre last year.
Oh, right.
And it was its first year in the ground. So it's done remarkably well. So, what do we know about it? Right, Coral Sun, it's an American selection, I believe. Its spring foliage is the most amazing sort of apricot. It's sort of a apricotty orangey colour.
And I think one of the things too, when you were taking that footage, because of the brightness of the colour and the light in spring, often you can have cloudy days, it does just look like burnished metal.
It
just,
was beautiful.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So this one's sort of greening off now.
Yeah.
Now I have to say my tree put up 2 sets of growth last year, and in midsummer it sent up some new growth, and it was also the same colour as the spring growth. So it didn't change its pattern of colouring. So it came up apricot even in the middle of summer when it got the new growth. But once this tree gets to a size where it starts to do all the other things that a Koelreuteria does, I mean, it really does pay its way. You've got the spring foliage. In the summer you have clusters of little yellow flowers, which are lovely.
Yeah.
And of course there's not many trees that are highly flowering things in midsummer. So it flowers when a lot of trees don't.
We do have a few though, and they're in our tree playlist, which we will link.
Yes, exactly. But that's not all. You know, it comes with steak knives virtually. When the flowers finish, it gets these very attractive papery copper coloured seed pods, which look fantastic, and the seed pods will hang on into the winter. So when the tree's bare, you'll have these seed pods hanging all over it. Its autumn foliage can be a really good strong apricotty yellow, and when the tree gets well advanced and gets a little bit of age to it, it gets a very attractive gnarly sort of antique-y look about it, which I find really appealing.
So it's like a quadruple threat. It's got flowers, spring foliage, autumn foliage, and a quirky shape.
And the seed pods. You missed
And the seed pods.
Yes.
5, whatever that is.
Yeah, it's one of them. So I think it's a tree that definitely deserves more use in gardens. It's also cold hardy, it's drought tolerant.
Where's it from?
It's Chinese in origin, Koelreuteria paniculata. It just seems to be as tough as Billio. I mean, it will grow anywhere in southern Australia quite well. It'll grow in Adelaide, it'll grow in Melbourne. They've used the ordinary form of it as a street tree in Canberra, which is a really difficult climate. Freezing cold in winter with very, very heavy frosts and really
hot
dry.
summers,
So it's been used as a street tree up there, and I see no reason why Coral Sun will be any more difficult to grow than the wild form of Koelreuteria paniculata. So there you go.
What about the seeds then? Is it a bit weedy?
The ordinary form does self-seed itself around a bit, so you have to be aware of that, and there might be some areas in which it has become weedy. This one, time will tell.
And what I've learnt from you, petioles. So even though the foliage has changed colour, the petioles are still
beautiful,
like a ruby red.
So the tree stands out all year round, and I think it's a wonderful tree. Comparatively new to Australia. I don't know when it was first bred, but we've only had it here available commercially over the last 5 to 6 years or so.
There we are.
So really interesting plant, and so I've got one of the forerunners in the group. So
of course you have, Stevie. You're always an early adopter.
Yeah, so I am, and you know, it's under threat if it becomes a common street tree, because then I won't want it anymore. No, that's not true.
Horticultural snob.
Well, it is true, yes.
Well, so in the scheme of things, we've looked at autumn foliage, obviously. That's quite common. We have looked at winter, things that have winter coloured stems. And we've done the late winter, early spring flowering shrubs. So we're kind of getting a little repertoire of things that do unusual things at odd times of the year.
And I think that's important.
Spring foliage being one of them.
Yes, I think so. And it also does illustrate a point that if you have a rush of blood when the first warm weather of spring comes on and you all rush off to the nurseries and you buy things that are looking lovely then, that's the sort of garden you're going to have. It's going to be an early spring garden, so you need to go out and look at things throughout the year and talk to your nursery person about whether these things have other strings to their bows.
So that's a very good piece of advice. If you kind of go every month to a nursery, you'll see what is doing what, and then you can figure out what your garden's going to look like rather than doing it all at one period.
Yeah, we need our gardens to entertain us and stimulate us all year round, so it's very important to get plants that do that.
Well, I'm entertained and stimulated by your garden, Stephen.
Oh, that's good.
And I hope you are too. And if you want to know what entertaining and stimulating story we're doing next week, you'll have to hit subscribe. We post once a week every Friday, but we also do a series of shorts. So if you've got a quick question for Herr Ryan, the guru of all things botanical, do put that question below and we will see if we can answer it in 60 seconds.
Yes. It's great fun. I'm enjoying doing that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye all.